Karl and Hilda sat relaxingly in their cozy kitchen. Karl smelled the freshly baked strudel floating through the air. The Schneids had been married for 15 years. The days seemed longer as the cost of things climbed. They were proud Germans and hardworking, living in Berlin, which was their city. They were married at the church in Koblestone-Strasse. Karl was a factory manager. They raised 2 children, with Hilda ruling the home like a German army general, yet a tender, sweet smile. Wealth escaped them, but they considered themselves lucky to have each other and a roof over their heads, especially during these hard times. Herr Schneid had considered himself to be part of the middle class. They did not want for anything, but as inflation skyrocketed and recession collided, the comfort of middle-class existence was more difficult as each day passed. The ongoing inflation had wreaked havoc on the country's ability to purchase very basic necessities, causing tremendous pain for families like theirs. Karl and Hilda had to budget their money very carefully, making sure that every penny was stretched as far as possible. Even with their best efforts, they often found themselves struggling to make ends meet. Their children, too, felt the effects of their financial difficulties. They knew of their positions in life, living from week to week, but that was who they were and what they had become. Franz, the 12-year-old son, and Florik, his sister 2 years younger, were grateful for what their parents could offer and asked for little. The Schneid family had always been close-knit, but the tough times had brought them even closer together. They supported one another as an insular, strong family and never lost sight of what was truly important in life. To them, material possessions were fleeting, but the love and respect for each other was never in doubt. They were good Germans and a fine German family. Karl was a war veteran, having survived the Great War. His experiences had left him with a deep sense of patriotism, but also a sense of caution when it came to politics. He knew all too well the dangers of blindly following a leader without questioning their motives. He was simply non-political in nature and wanted to be left alone. However, one day, Karl sat down with Hilda, a serious look on his face. "Hilda, we need to talk," he said. "My friends at work and some of the neighbors are urging me to attend meetings of the National Socialism Party. They say it's the best way forward for Germany, especially with the economy being what it is." Hilda's eyes widened in shock. "Oh, Karl, I've heard what Hitler is saying about the Jews, the Slav, and others who have been isolated as enemies of the state. It's terrible. My friend Rachel and David are Jewish, and they've been nothing but kind to us. How can people believe such things? And what Hitler is saying in his speeches I hear on radio are frightening. He sounds so angry, so mad, so evil." Karl nodded, his expression grim. I know. I don't like it either, nor him. But it's not just about that. People are desperate, Hilda. They're looking for someone to blame for the hardships we've been through since the war, and Hitler is giving them hope. False or not." Hilda's voice was filled with concern. "But at what cost, Karl? You fought in the Great War. You know the price of following a path without questioning it." Karl sighed heavily. "Yes, I do, and that's why I'm hesitant. But you have to understand, if I don't join, it could mean fewer opportunities for us and the children. Jobs are scarce, and party members are getting preferential treatment everywhere." Hilda's eyes narrowed. "I understand the practical reasons, Karl, but what about our morals? What about the children? What will we be teaching them if we go along with this?" Karl looked at his wife, his expression pained. "That's the dilemma, isn't it?" 6 months passed since the morning talk over coffee and strudel. Karl feels more pressure than ever to give National Socialism a chance. He has grown concerned about his job security. People were talking, and when he tried to enter the conversations, he was often met with silence. He did notice, however, that more of his friends who once said they could never support the Nazis or Hitler were now publicly praising him. He could feel the change in the air. Karl was surprised when his supervisor one day blurted out that Hitler is simply saying out loud what we're saying privately. His friends and fellow employees at the factory constantly dropped hints and sometimes subtle threats that if one did not get aboard the Hitler Express, They and their families would be left back at the tracks, alone and poor. Hitler was now running to be chancellor, which concerned Karl even more. For the first time, Karl felt Hitler had a good chance of winning, and his party could control the Reichstag. Which thoughts Karl could not stomach. He hated watching innocent men and women beaten up on the streets by those brown-shirted thugs. Men wearing party garb were walking the streets, filling the cafes like never before. Karl had just left the factory on this brisk Monday evening for his appointment with his good friend Erich. He loved those rendezvous with Erich, who was fun-loving, and especially so after a stein of beer at the brew hall. Or two. Erich reaches out and says, "Karl, my friend, it's good to see you. How have you been holding up?" Karl responded, "Erich, it's been tough, to be honest. Work is scarce and I fear I might lose my job soon. The pressure to join the party is increasing every day. I understand, Karl. Times are hard for everyone. That's why I think you should come with me to the Hitler rally in Berlin next Friday. It could be a turning point for you, especially with the elections coming up," he said. "I appreciate the offer, Erich, but you know how I feel about Hitler and his policies. I can't just set aside my beliefs for the sake of a job," Karl replied. "I get it, Karl, I really do. But sometimes we have to make compromises for the greater good. Look, I've seen friends who joined the party get positions, even in these hard times. It could be a way out for you and your family," Erich pleaded. "A way out at what cost? I've seen people beaten on the streets, Erich. Good people. Jewish people we've known for years. I can't be part of that," Karl said. "I don't condone the violence either, Karl. But think about it. If you're inside the party, you could maybe influence things for the better. You're a smart, reasonable man. We need people like you," Erich replied. "Or I could be forced into doing things I can't stomach. Have you thought about that? What if I'm ordered to participate in these beatings or worse?" Karl asked. "I have indeed had those thoughts, Karl. But the way I see it, if good men do nothing, then we're leaving the future of our country in the hands of extremists," he said. "That's a noble thought, Erich, but what if it's futile? What if the system is designed to crush any dissent? I fought in the Great War and I've seen how blind allegiance can lead to disaster," Karl said. "I know you're a war hero, Karl, and that's why I respect your opinion. But Hitler is gaining momentum, and if he becomes chancellor, being on the outside might put you and your family at risk," he said. "I've thought about that too. But my wife Hilda has close Jewish friends. How can I look her in the eye if I join a party that openly discriminates against them?" Karl asked. "It's a difficult situation, no doubt. But maybe you can use your position to protect them, to be their voice when they have none," he suggested. "It's a big gamble, Erich. And what about our children? What lessons are we teaching them? That it's okay to compromise your values for personal gain?" Karl asked. "We're teaching them survival, Karl. Sometimes that's the harshest lesson life has to offer," he said. "Survival at the expense of our soul is a high price to pay, my friend," Karl said. "I won't push you, Karl. The decision is yours to make. But remember, sometimes the world forces us to make choices we're not comfortable with, for the sake of those we love," he said. "I appreciate your understanding, Erich. It's a decision that weighs heavily on me, and I need to think it through thoroughly," Karl said. "Take your time, Karl, but remember, time is a luxury we might not have much of. Do you want one of my cigarettes? Taste great with beers," he offered. "No, but thank you, and Erich, thank you for being a friend even when our views diverge," Karl said. 1 week later. Despite feeling both curious and fearful about the rapidly changing world forces, Karl attended a Nazi rally with Erich. It was the first time Karl had ever witnessed Adolf Hitler in person. During his speech, Hitler promised and threatened that he would be the instrument of revenge, and that only he could reverse the embarrassments of the Versailles Treaty, the terrors of the unbearable inflation, and the economic collapse. Hitler absolved his followers and blamed others for destroying the once proud Germany. After the rally, the conversation between Karl and Erich unfolded under the dim glow of the city lights, smoke curling from their cigarettes painting fleeting patterns in the night air. "Karl," Erich started, his voice low, "what did you think? Quite the spectacle, wasn't it? Karl, his mind still reeling from the potent cocktail of emotions the rally had stirred within him, took a long drag from his cigarette before replying. "Erich," he said slowly, "I've never seen anything like tonight. The energy, the unity, it was almost spiritual." He paused, searching for the right words. But also frightening, exuberant yet terrifying. Erich grinned, his eyes glinting with a kind of fervor that Karl found both unsettling and strangely alluring. "I told you, my friend," he said, placing a hand on Karl's shoulder. "Hitler has a way of capturing hearts. He speaks to our deepest fears, hopes, and desires for a better Germany." Karl nodded, unable to deny the truth in Erich's words. Hitler had touched upon all the issues that gnawed at his own soul: the economic uncertainty, the humiliation of the Treaty of Versailles, and the gnawing fear of the future. "He does," Karl admitted, a shiver running down his spine. "And that's what scares me most. For a moment there, I forgot who I was and what I believed in. Lost myself in the crowd, in the anger and passion of the moment." Erich chuckled, a dark, almost ominous sound. "That's the power of a true leader, Karl," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "He makes you believe in the impossible, makes you crave the answers he promises, even if they come at a cost." Karl felt a wave of nausea rise within him. The image of the roaring crowd, their faces contorted with hate, flashing before his eyes. "But, like we have discussed, look at the costs, Erich," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "What about Hilda's friends? What about the violence on the streets? Is this the future we're marching towards?" Erich's smile faltered momentarily, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. "Karl," he said, his voice regaining its strength, "every revolution has its casualties. But we must look beyond the immediate pain to the greater good. Think of your children, Karl. Think of them growing up in a strong, united Germany, a Germany that can finally stand tall again." Karl's heart ached at the thought of his children, of the future he desperately wanted for them. But a part of him, a tiny voice whispering in the back of his mind, refused to be silenced. "A united Germany that excludes and vilifies a part of its own people?" he countered, his voice rising in anger. "Erich, during the Great War, I found where blind nationalism and hatred can lead. I won't let myself be swept away by another wave of ideology that tramples on humanity." Erich sighed, the tension in his shoulders easing. "I understand your concerns, Karl," he said, his voice softer now. "But sometimes, we have to choose the lesser of two evils. Your job is at risk, and your family's future is uncertain. Joining the movement could be your only chance to rise above it all." Karl closed his eyes, the weight of his internal conflict threatening to crush him. His conscience battled with his fear, and his desire to protect his family with his deeply ingrained sense of right and wrong. "Or I could become one of them," he whispered, his voice thick with despair, lost in the fervor, swept away by the tide of promises pushed by the winds of hate. Erich placed a hand on Karl's shoulder, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "You do not have a bone of hate within you, Karl," he said softly. "And maybe, just maybe, that will make all the difference." Karl knew Erich was right. Even if he couldn't stop the movement, he could still choose how he moved within it. He could try to be a force for good, a voice of reason amid madness. But it was a dangerous risk with stakes far higher than his own life. "It's a gamble, Erich," Karl said, his voice heavy with the weight of the decision before him. "A dangerous one. And the stakes are not just my future, but the soul of this country, the lessons we pass on to our children." Erich nodded, his face etched with concern. "Life is a gamble, my friend," he said, his voice firm yet laced with empathy. "The question is, can you live with yourself if you don't take the risk?" Karl looked into Erich's eyes, seeking an answer, a sign to guide him through the darkness. But all he saw was the reflection of his doubt and fear. And Karl knew Erich was right. He was living in a world teetering on the brink, where the lines between right and wrong blurred. He had to accept the uncertainty, the fear, and the responsibility that came with it. Momentous yet frightening times that could define us or destroy us, Karl said, his voice filled with a newfound resolve. He turned to Eric, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you for inviting me tonight, Eric. It's given me much to think about." Karl looked at the starlit sky, igniting a tiny spark of defiance within him. In a world that was becoming increasingly uncertain, he knew the heavens above would never be the same. The next Friday morning, Karl was walking through the work gate, lost in thought. He was struggling with memories of a recent rally and his own conflicting emotions. He couldn't understand why the crowd, including himself, had been so captivated by the speeches and the vision of a new Germany. He was even more troubled by his growing acceptance of a man he had previously despised. Later that day, Karl's world was shaken further when he was unexpectedly fired from his job. His supervisor demurred to explain his reasons, but Karl felt he could read his boss's face. Karl's fears about the rising tide of National Socialism in Germany seemed to be coming true. He was left with a mix of confusion, fear, and anger. Karl shared the bad news with his friend Erich, who offered him a job with the Nazi Party. Feeling he had no other choice, Karl accepted. Now he had to break the news to his wife, Hilda. Karl said, "Hilda, we need to talk. I've been listening to Hitler and other Nazi speeches on the radio lately. I know how we both feel about the party, but things have changed." "What do you mean, Karl? What's changed?" Hilda responded, a note of concern in her voice. Karl explained, "I've been laid off, Hilda. I have no idea why I was terminated, but I know in my heart of heart it was because I have not publicly spoken out in favor of the Nazi movement and Hitler. Anyway, it does not matter. With the economy getting worse every day, I just—" "Oh, Karl, that's horrible. But are you telling me that you are joining the Nazi Party?" Hilda asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "No, I am not telling you that. I have already joined. This afternoon, Eric told me he could get me a job with them. I had no choice, Hilda, I swear. They are the future. It was time to face reality, which I did this afternoon," Karl confessed, his voice heavy with resignation. Hilda, shocked, said, "Karl, you're talking about a man and a movement that openly hates others for no good reason. Hitler, Adolf Hitler, a failed artist, and now you will be beholden to him. He is a lunatic. He can't control what he says, and those in power cannot control him. How can you even consider this?" "I know, Hilda, I know. We have 2 children to feed, bills to pay. I can't let my family starve," Karl replied, his voice tinged with desperation. "I understand the desperation, Karl, but he and his thugs are everything we hate," Hilda countered, her voice filled with emotion. Karl admitted, "I've been wrestling with those issues, believe me. But the more I listen to Hitler, the more I think that there is a reason for his political strength. There's a mysterious reason that his Germany First loyalists are accepting him as their leader. I know, I've read the papers. They accuse the Nazis of being a cult. Maybe it's deeper than that. I cannot explain it, but ask yourself, why would a man like Hitler be building one of the strongest moments in our nation's history? It is so strange. It's almost as if his presence has been ordained. I don't know. I honestly don't understand. But now you're one of them. What do we tell our Jewish friends? What do we tell our children?" Hilda asked, her voice filled with worry. "I don't have answers to those questions, Hilda. All I know is that right now I have a responsibility to provide for this family. And this seems like the only way," Karl said, his voice firm yet troubled. "Karl, if you do this, you're putting us on a path that could lead to places we have never imagined," Hilda warned. "I'm scared, Hilda. Scared of what this could mean for us, for our children. But I'm more scared of the alternative, of not being able to put food on the table, of losing our home," Karl confessed, his fear evident. "I'm scared too, Karl, but I'm also scared of losing you, the man I love, to a man, and a cause we both hate. Promise me, Karl. Promise me that you will not change," Hilda pleaded. "While I admit Hitler is unique and his message is resonating, I joined the party for the job. Karl tried to reassure her. Can you really promise that, Karl? Once you're in, will you even have the choice? Hilda questioned, her voice laced with doubt. I have to believe that I will, Hilda. I have to believe that I can navigate this tightrope without losing my core, Karl said, trying to sound confident. Karl, do this for us, for the family. Please be careful, Hilda implored. I promise, Hilda, and if it ever comes to a point where I have to choose between the party and our family's integrity, I choose us. Always, Karl vowed. We'll get through this one way or another. We'll face whatever comes, but we'll face it together, Hilda said, her voice a mix of determination and fear. Ladies and gentlemen, this is January 30th, 1933. I am Claude Schultz, and you are listening to Reichsrundfunkgesellschaft broadcasting live from Berlin. We interrupt your regular programming to bring you a momentous announcement that is poised to reshape the trajectory of German history. President Paul von Hindenburg has just appointed Adolf Hitler as the Chancellor of Germany. Born in Austria in 1889, Hitler's early life was modest. Initially a struggling artist, he later became a decorated soldier in the Great War. Rising through the ranks of the Nazi Party with his oratory skills and effective use of propaganda, he survived the repercussions of a failed coup attempt in 1923. Now, Hitler, once a vagrant who grappled with the aftermath of war, including injuries from a gas attack, ascends to lead the nation, vowing radical transformation and a fervent commitment to restoring Germany's prominence. The political atmosphere in Germany is charged, with the National Socialist and Communist parties dominating the Reichstag, stirring unease among the industrial elite and conservative elements. President Hindenburg has appointed Hitler, albeit with reservations, in a coalition government with Franz von Papen as vice-chancellor, in hopes of curbing his influence and maintaining a reign on the Sturmabteilung, the SA. We find ourselves at a crossroads in German history as Hitler, a figure molded by both adversity and ascendancy, steps into the chancellery. Today, we are observers to a turning point as we contemplate the future ramifications of his leadership. Indeed, it is a day of historical consequence, brought forth by an extraordinary individual. This is Claude Schultz of Reichsrundfunkgesellschaft, returning you to your regular programming. Karl had just listened to the announcement of Hitler's appointment as Chancellor, with a mixture of wariness and subtle pleasure. As a staunch anti-communist, he couldn't help but consider the potential benefits. The loss his cousin suffered during the Bolshevik Revolution in the early 20s had left a deep impression on him. While Karl empathized with the working class, he hated the idea of governmental control over resources. To him, the German and international media were overly fixated on Hitler's provocative statements. Karl believed that Hitler's actions, not his words, truly mattered. He felt that Hitler's condemnations and threats against the Jewish people and non-Aryans, such as claiming they were poisoning the blood of the German people, was appalling. But he was hoping people would look beyond the inflammatory and towards the job performance that counts. Since losing his job at the factory, Karl's and Hilda's life had truly changed for the better for them. Thanks to Karl's hard work and loyalty and a helping hand from Erich, he climbed the ranks within the National Socialist Party. His current role involved overseeing public work construction, particularly the building of highways. Excited to share the great news, Karl turned to his wife, Hilda, who offered him a weak smile and a reassuring squeeze of his hand. Hilda, did you hear the announcement? Hitler is now the Chancellor of Germany. This could be a turning point for us in the country, Karl said with cautious optimism. Yes, I heard it, Karl, Hilda replied, her voice tinged with reluctance. I can't say I'm thrilled, but given our situation, maybe it's a promising sign. Karl nodded, his thoughts firmly against communism. You know how I feel about it. My cousin lost everything during the Bolshevik Revolution. Hitler could be the strong leader we need to prevent that from happening here. Hilda acknowledged his concerns, though her unease was palpable. Karl continued, and I appreciate your feelings towards the party. But look at us. Unlike those who hate him, I've got a great position with many growth opportunities with him as Chancellor. We are doing better than ever before. If I had not decided to join, we might be in the streets." Hilda sighed. "I know, Karl. I am glad you feel secure in your job and with our future. I just feel uneasy. And if Hitler can stabilize the country, maybe those harsh things he says will subside?" Karl agreed. "Exactly. I know we've had our moral and ethical concerns, but sometimes we have to look at the bigger picture. His leadership could be good for Germany and, admittedly, for us." Hilda expressed hope but couldn't hide her concern for their Jewish friends. "I hope you're right, Karl. I do. But I am concerned about them. I don't think they view the big picture like we do." Karl acknowledged the weight of her words. "I haven't forgotten, Hilda. And it still weighs on me. But if I'm inside the system, maybe I can do something, however small, to mitigate those issues." Hilda ended the conversation on a note of hope mixed with apprehension. "I do hope so. I am just concerned that with our success, we never forget who we are." On February 28, 1933, less than 4 weeks after Hitler became Chancellor, an arsonist torched the Reichstag building, the seat of government for the country. The next day, Eli Wolf, Karl's direct supervisor, called him into this spacious office. He suspected Wolf would suddenly bring up the fire, which was suddenly the talk of the world. Thus, Karl felt the Reichstag fire would inevitably arise, a subject he was keen to avoid. Upon his arrival, Karl knocked and was greeted by Wolf, who promptly invited him in with a customary "Heil Hitler." Karl echoed the greeting and took a seat as Wolf began the conversation. "Heil Hitler. Karl, have a seat. I've called you in today because I want to discuss some news with you," Wolf said, initiating the discussion. Karl, already dreading the mention of the Reichstag fire, replied politely, "Thank you, Captain Wolf. What's the news?" "I want to commend you on the excellent work you've been doing on the public highway construction projects. Your dedication and efficiency have not gone unnoticed," Wolf praised, surprising Karl. "I appreciate the kind words, Captain. I've been doing my best to serve the party and our great nation," Karl responded with a sense of pride. Wolf continued, "And it shows, Karl. Your loyalty to National Socialism and to our Führer, Adolf Hitler, has been exemplary. That's why I'm pleased to inform you that you are being promoted to Major Supervisor of all highway projects in northern Deutschland." Karl's eyes widened in disbelief. "Major Supervisor? That's incredible news, Captain Wolf. I'm honored and humbled by this opportunity." "You've earned it, Karl. Your new position will come with greater responsibilities, of course, but I have every confidence that you'll rise to the occasion," Wolf assured him. "I won't let you down, Herr Wolf. I'll continue to work diligently and uphold the values of the party," Karl promised, his voice filled with determination. Wolf nodded approvingly before shifting the topic. "Good. I'm sure you've heard about the unfortunate incident last night, the burning of the Reichstag building." "Yes, it's all anyone is talking about. A terrible act and a direct attack on our government," Karl acknowledged, a sense of unease creeping in. "Indeed it is. Hitler and the party are blaming the communists, and there's talk that some are blaming the Jews as well. These are trying times, Karl, and they call for decisive action," Wolf stated, gauging Karl's reaction. Karl, cautious in his response, agreed. "I couldn't agree more, Captain. We can't let those responsible go unpunished." Wolf probed further. "Who do you think caused the fire, Karl? A communist? A Jew?" "A communist Jew, since they're basically the same as you know." Karl hesitated before replying, "Well, I don't know." "They are sneaky and evil people, Karl. You know that, don't you?" Wolf pressed. Karl, aware of the need to show allegiance, responded carefully, "Herr Wolf, I have really never thought much about them. They are becoming a problem, Herr Wolf." "Exactly. And with this crisis, there will be a need for strong leadership. Thank God we have Hitler. Heads will roll, maybe Jewish heads. I suspect there will be some major changes, and those loyal to the party like yourself can reach great heights," Wolf said. implying the gravity of the situation. "I stand ready to serve in any capacity that the party requires, Captain," Karl affirmed, his voice steady. "I'm glad to hear it, Karl. We're entering a critical phase in our nation's history, and men like you will play a significant role in shaping its future," Wolf concluded, signaling the end of their meeting. Karl, feeling the weight of his new role and the moral complexities of the situation, responded, "I'm committed to doing whatever it takes to ensure the prosperity and security of our nation, Captain Wolf." "That's the spirit, Karl. Congratulations again on your well-deserved promotion. I look forward to seeing great things from you," Wolf said, offering a final word of encouragement. "Thank you, Captain. I won't let you or the party down." "Heil Hitler," Karl said, rising from his seat. "Heil Hitler," Wolf echoed as Karl exited the office, his mind swirling with the implications of their conversation and his escalating involvement in the political landscape of Germany. Only a day after the fire, at Hitler's urging, President Hindenburg signed the Reichstag fire decree into law. On March 23rd, only 6 weeks after the fire, the German parliament voted to give Adolf Hitler full powers and authority. The industrial class, who thought they could control Hitler, began to learn otherwise. 1 week later, Jewish shops and businesses were boycotted. The next week, Jews were barred from civil service, university, and state positions. On May 10, 1933, books written by Jews, political dissidents, and others were burned. The following day, Hilda met with her new acquaintances, Gertie and Lise, at the Reich Club for lunch. The Reich Club is a new social club where those who are finding success in the new Germany have joined to meet others. "Ladies, it's so lovely to see you all. The Reich Club is really becoming popular, isn't it?" Hilda said, looking around the bustling club. "Absolutely, Hilda. It's wonderful to be among like-minded individuals, especially in these tumultuous times," Gertie replied, nodding in agreement. Lise, speaking quietly, added, "Indeed. The actions taken by our government are brutal." She paused, suddenly realizing she was in uncertain company. Hilda responded with a sense of sorrow and then with a sudden feeling of superiority. "Oh, they certainly are brutal on some lists. But these are not ordinary times. My husband Karl has been saying that ever since he got his promotion. Karl's doing such important work. Building highways is like building the future of Germany. He's laying the foundation for our nation to be supreme for centuries. That is, unless troublemakers want to create obstacles," Gertie remarked. Lise, uncertain if she should breach the subject further, asked, "So, ladies, what do you make of all these restrictions? It's been a whirlwind of activity and new laws. And did you ever think that Adolf Hitler would have virtually all control over the nation? He's an odd man, you know." "Well, he seems to know what he's doing. I'm just glad I'm not one of them," Gertie said confidently. Hilda, trying to keep her sympathy for her Jewish friends from being exposed, said, "I know some Jews. I pretty much lost touch with them. Maybe they should just leave Germany. Some people just don't want them here, it seems." "I guess none of them are working for your husband, Hilda," Gertie said sarcastically. "That's funny," Hilda replied with a snarky laugh, hoping to hide her sorrow. "I'd say not many are working, period, as many have lost their jobs and business. The country is changing so fast, I'm not sure I'm going to recognize it in a year or two. Maybe that's a good thing. We have been so unfairly punished since the Great War, and it's not people like us who are to be blamed," Lise mused. "Well, Lise, revenge is strong medicine. Hitler promised he would lead the retribution against those who have caused our country to suffer so dearly. It looks like he's only living up to what he promised," Hilda observed. "I don't know about you, but I'm delighted over what's been happening since Hitler took over after that fire. We need somebody strong. We need somebody who will say what we have been thinking, but have been so afraid to be open and honest. He's protecting our national security by removing scum and what I call human vermin from our government and places of importance. This is a new day for Germany, and those who suffer as a consequence can simply move or else pay whatever consequences that might befall upon them. Our loyalty to the party and to our Führer must be unwavering, Gertie declared passionately. Look, I fully understand. The party has been very good for us. Karl was unemployed, joined, and now within a matter of months is working at a very powerful position in government. The future is very bright for us and for our country. Yes, there will be hurtful days for some of our longtime friends. I recognize that. It is both exhilarating and frightening at the same moment, Hilda admitted. It's been a delightful lunch. Let us do it again soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Claude Schultz of Reichsrundfunkgesellschaft, broadcasting live from Berlin on this 4th day of October, with a special news bulletin that bears profound implications for the future of Jews in Germany and the transformation of our nation. Today, Propaganda Minister Josef Goebbels announced the enactment of the Schriftleitergesetz, also known as the Editor's Law. In his words, Minister Goebbels declared, "I have the natural intention to be and to remain the warm-hearted protector of the German press." Under this new mandate, soon to be implemented, journalists will be required to possess an Aryan certificate as proof of Aryan descent to practice their profession. As our listeners may recall, in July, the Nazi Party was declared the sole political party in Germany. This autumn, the government revoked the citizenship of recently naturalized German Jews. Jews have already found themselves barred from employment in literature, theater, film, music, and the fine arts. Now this exclusion extends to the German media industry. The trajectory of German Jews is becoming increasingly precarious with each passing day. This is Claude Schultz of Reichsrundfunkgesellschaft, signing off. May God bless and protect our great nation, the Nazi Party, and Adolf Hitler.
Hilda visited the neighborhood coffee shop after spending the afternoon at party headquarters. She felt strange, almost as if she was being followed. Before entering the quaint, bitte German cafe house for a quick afternoon energy boost, she looked around once more, unsure if it was the wind howling at her, or perhaps something more sinister. After ordering, she took a seat at the corner table. Suddenly, two figures approached her, huddled in overcoats. As their shadows fell upon the table, she recognized one, and then the other. "My lord, David, Rachel, it's you! It's been so long! How have you been?" Hilda exclaimed, her voice a mix of surprise and concern. David replied with a heavy heart, "Hilda, it's difficult to say we've been well given the circumstances." Rachel, her tone bitter, added, "Yes, it's been a challenging time for us, to say the least." "I can imagine," Hilda said sympathetically. "Can I buy you two some coffee and biscuits?" David exchanged glances with Rachel before declining softly. "No, thank you. We don't want any attention. We have been following you this afternoon, from the party headquarters to here. It's not fun hiding in the shadows. We have much to discuss with you." Hilda gestured for them to sit. "Of course, please have a seat." David began, his voice filled with despair. "Hilda, we're planning to emigrate to the United States. We can't stay here any longer. The atmosphere has become unbearable for Jews." Rachel chimed in. "David lost his professorship at the University of Berlin. Our lives have been turned upside down. I cannot find work either. Nobody seems to want to hire a journalist anymore, especially if they are like me." Hilda acknowledged the grim reality. "I heard about the laws and the edicts. It's strange for all of us, as these are difficult times." David, his frustration evident, countered, "Difficult time for everyone? Hilda, Jews are being systematically stripped of their rights, their jobs, their dignity. How can you say it's difficult for everyone?" Hilda, trying to explain, said, "David, you know how much I have valued our friendship, but things have changed. The government is taking measures they believe are necessary for the greater good for the German people." Rachel, incredulous, asked, "Greater good? Denying people their rights, their livelihoods, is for the greater good? Becoming second- and third-class citizens, simply due to our birthright and heritage, is good for the German people?" David added, It's good for some German people, Hilda. You and Karl have become foreigners in our homeland. Our paths have diverged, you know that. You and Karl are married to the Nazis. We have not changed. We're still Jewish, or shall I say, Jews without the rights, liberties, and securities we once took for granted. Hilda defended her position. Karl and I are doing what we believe is right for our family and our country. Or good for the two of you personally, David retorted. Hilda, at what cost? We're surviving, David. We're adapting to the times, Hilda replied, her voice tinged with resignation. Rachel, her voice rising, accused, adapting or surrendering your basic values and principles? Hilda, growing frustrated, said, enough of all of this. I am sorry that you both and other Jewish people are going through this. It is not my choice. You didn't track me to insult me. Tell me why you are here. David, his voice somber, explained, we're debating emigrating because we can't live in a society that treats us as subhuman. And we're shocked that people we once considered friends could support such a regime. Hilda, trying to be pragmatic, responded, David, it's not that simple. The world is a complicated place. We must make difficult choices. Jews are simply caught in the middle of this chaos. Half of you all are bankers and the other half are communists. So, obviously, you've become easy targets for Germans who simply want to return to the greatness we deserve that was robbed from us. Rachel, her voice filled with disbelief, said, easy targets? How about scapegoats? And, my gosh, Hilda, what do you mean that half of us are bankers and the other half are communists? Is this the Hilda we have known for ages doing this talking? Hilda, her anger rising as her coffee grew cold, admitted, David, you don't understand the pressures, the fear of losing everything. We had to make choices for the sake of our family's survival. Rachel, her voice urgent, pleaded, we understand survival, Hilda. That's what we need to discuss with you. You and Karl have friends in important places now. We need help to get out of Germany. We're not sure where we will go, whether it be the Holy Land or America or England or wherever. You can help us arrange the move, can't you? We're literally broke since we cannot work. Please, Hilda, help your friends at a moment of need. Hilda, feeling a mix of guilt and anguish, replied, you have put me in a very precarious situation, David and Rachel. Do you know that? How can you ask that of me? You know what that could do to Karl's position. You'll simply have to get help through some Zionist organization or some other place who do these types of things. I am sorry, I really am. I have fond feelings for the two of you, and for so many others like you. The world has changed. Germany is beginning to recover from the shackles of despair and hopelessness. Hitler is giving us hope. He says a lot, which I just ignore. I look for action, not words. David, resigned to their failure, said, Hilda, keep ignoring his words. He means what he says. Now that he's supreme leader, he can carry out those words into actions. I am sorry, but we will leave you and relieve you of your discomfort. Both David and Rachel rose to leave. Hilda, her voice soft, said, Goodbye, David. Goodbye, Rachel. You will always be in our prayers. It is Christmas 1933. Berlin and most of Germany is covered with white powdery snow. Hilda and Karl are in their kitchen, sipping coffee and eating strudel. It has been more than 1 year since Karl first felt pressure from co-employees and the supervisor to join the National Socialist Revolution. Hilda, it is so wonderful to relax during this holiday season. We have so much to be thankful for right now. Who would have predicted that we would have new friends, knew just about everything? Karl, I love you so much. You have been very courageous and dedicated to your family and to our country, said Hilda with a warm smile. Holding a letter, Karl replied, Thank you, Hilda. I love you too, for so many reasons, including your support. However, I have some news we need to discuss. I received a letter from the Gestapo. We are being asked to provide everything we know about our neighbor Hans and about David and Rachel. Apparently, both David and Rachel have been quite outspoken over the past few weeks. Rachel was a journalist and David was a university professor. Now, these Jews have gotten Hans involved in their lives, he said somewhat angrily and sarcastically. Apparently Hans was trying to help them survive. My best guess is Hans had no idea that they have become part of the resistance. Now we are implicated and must disclose everything we know about both. Oh God. Hans, but he's been our neighbor for years. He's a good man, a great German. He even sports a Nazi flag on their front porch, Hilda complained with a frown. I know, but you understand what this means, don't you? If we don't help the Gestapo, we're putting my own job and your position with the party at risk, Karl explained gravely. Well, we don't know anything about Hans, do we? And as far as the Jews, they shouldn't be interfering with the government by joining some type of resistance, Hilda rationalized. Well, I do know that Hans has been acting strange lately. He has that flag in front of his house, but honestly, I have my doubts. He has never gone to any rallies to my knowledge, and he just looks somewhat suspicious from time to time. Also, strangely, I thought I saw David and Rachel go into his house a couple of weeks ago. Frankly, I didn't think much about it at the time. Perhaps I did not want to think about it. Hans has taught theology at the university for years. He told me once that he hated how the Jewish people were blamed for killing Jesus, and that it was a religious sect who felt betrayed by Jesus' message, which conflicted with their basic religious belief. However, he should know better than to put his family and his lovely wife in any kind of jeopardy. Oh, and his wife, Gloria. I have always suspected her to be part Jewish, simply due to her not wanting to eat certain foods. Karl pondered aloud, his brow furrowed in thought. But Karl, those are just suspicions on your part, it seems. You don't have anything specific to tell the Gestapo, right? Do you really want to destroy a good German family by spreading suspicions and theories you might have? You're much better than that, Hilda argued, her voice laced with concern. No, I don't really. But I do believe my suspicions are important. Based upon stories I have heard, they will now want me to be very watchful and to almost surveil him in the future. That's how the Gestapo handles these matters, you know. Yes, they are suspicions, but they are based somewhat on fact. I can't ignore what I think. Do you want us to end up like Hans? Also, and I hate mentioning this at a time like this, but this further proves my party loyalty. You never know how that could benefit us in the future, Karl said, his voice tinged with a blend of justification and reluctance. This is terrible. In the scheme of things, at worst, all Hans might have done is to help a couple of our Jewish friends who have radicalized, Hilda mused, shaking her head slowly. Our former friends, Hilda. We chose a path and they chose theirs, Karl reminded her sternly. But does that make it right, Karl, to effectively betray the trusts of someone we've known for so long? Hilda questioned, her eyes searching Karl's for an answer. I don't know what's right anymore. All I know is that we have a life now, a secure life for us and our children. Do you want to throw that away? Karl asked, his voice rising in frustration. I don't know what this world is coming to. A year ago, we committed to be loyal to our beliefs. Now we need to be loyal to a man and a party. What's happening to us, Karl? Hilda asked, her voice breaking with emotion. We've made compromises, yes, but we did it for our family, for our children's future, Karl reasoned, trying to convince both Hilda and himself. At what point do we stop compromising, Karl? At what point do we say, enough is enough? Hilda challenged, her hands trembling slightly. I wish I had an answer, Hilda, but the truth is I don't. All I have are fears. Fears of losing everything we've built. Fears of what will happen to us if we don't comply. Karl confessed, the weight of his words heavy in the air. And I have fears too, Karl. Fears of losing ourselves, of becoming people we can't recognize, all in the name of security and power. Hilda added, her gaze dropping to the floor. So what do we do, Hilda? Do we cooperate with the Gestapo and tell them everything we know about Hans and about David and Rachel? Karl asked angrily out of frustration. I don't know, Karl. I just don't know. However, I do know that those Jews are now causing Hans serious trouble and now dragging us into this drama. Karl, I know that David and Rachel are desperate. They asked me for help. I told them I could not. I felt horrible because I truly love them and our memories. I know they have been unfairly treated over the years and the attacks have been vicious. But they didn't have to work with the resistance and then involve a good German like Hans. That much I know. Hilda replied, her voice filled with a mix of guilt and resolve. I understand how you feel, totally. I am exhausted, frightened, and angry about all of this. Honestly, this is not how I would want to spend my Christmas day. It's not how I want to spend the upcoming year. We have worked so hard to take care of our children, even if it meant being Nazi party leaders of sort. But the Gestapo means business. Failing to disclose an important fact, failing to surveil our neighbor will not only destroy my career and yours, but could very well mean prison. They are vicious, Karl said slowly, with seriousness and fear. Yes, they are. I know some members of the Gestapo. They are fine, dedicated Germans who love God and country and are loyal to the party and Hitler. I know they mean well. This is just so confusing and horrifying, Karl. My dearest Hilda, yes, it is. Karl sadly sighed. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Claude Schultz of Reichsrundfunkgesellschaft, coming to you live from Berlin. We interrupt your regular programming for a momentous announcement that will undoubtedly shape the course of German history. Today, August 19, 1934, a referendum has been held giving formal approval for Adolf Hitler to succeed former President Paul von Hindenburg, who died 17 days ago. Hitler is expected to abolish the office of president and declare himself Führer of the German Reich as well as retain the powers of the Chancellor. As Führer, Hitler now becomes the absolute dictator of Germany, with no legal or constitutional limits to his authority. The vote is causing great consternation among Jews who already complain about their being banned from major occupations, such as university instructors, journalists, civil servants, and other positions of delicacy and influence. Just this year, their religious holidays were barred from the German calendar, and Jews can no longer be members of the Germany Labor Front. Which brings us to this very important Berlin news story. A former famous young university professor, David Goldsmer, and his wife Rachel, a renowned journalist, have been arrested this afternoon. A well-respected Berlin German physician, a Christian, Hans Gloik, has also been charged. Reportedly, the three engaged in creating and possessing false passport documentation. Dozens of passports were confiscated. The Gestapo claims the three have been unhinged for over a year, but the police refuse to provide any details about the investigation. However, the organization released a press statement, warning Jews and their German conspirators that this type of gross criminal activity might result in life in prison or even death, now that Adolf Hitler was in total control. This is Claude Schultz of Reichsrundfunkgesellschaft, signing off. May God bless and protect our great nation, the Nazi Party, and our Supreme Commander, Führer Adolf Hitler. and our supreme commander, Führer, Adolf Hitler,